Welcome here tonight. Call the March meeting to order of the Board of Supervisors. We have all supervisors present, needed staff. Anybody want to join me in the invocation? Lord, please give us the courage and wisdom to make sound decisions while we handle the county's business tonight. Please be with the citizens as well as other individuals who need to travel home tonight. And please be with the sick and shut-in who are unable to attend. And let's all think about the servicemen we have overseas and hope they make it home safely. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the republic
republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank y'all. Folks and members of the board, we tried a little different setup tonight. Try to get some more eye-to-eye contact where we can have some discussions while we have a white arc here. We've also added some monitors where we can see what's behind us, so we kind of don't have to look around. Bear with us. We'll try it. If it doesn't work, we'll try something different. So moving into the agenda, we have any need for amend the board agenda tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we would like to amend it for a closed session at the end of the meeting.
Or
But I think Mr. Gore is going to be able to read the language, but it's for Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711, 8 and A9, deals with cybersecurity infrastructure and protocols.
okay, thank you, Mr. Harvey. Is there any other amendments to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add a section to do a nomination for a committee.
Okay, Mr. Easter. Any more?
Yeah, I would like to do the same thing for the EDA.
Okay, gentlemen, we will add that to the end of the meeting. Is that fine with everybody?
Yes, and I see closed meetings already on the published agenda.
Yep.
It's number 10.
All right. I got a motion to add those committee appointments to the agenda. Amended.
So moved.
Mr. Easter. Any more discussion? All in favor of adding to the committee appointments to the agenda, raise your hand. Motion carries. All right, moving on to the minutes. Gentlemen, we've had the minutes in front of us for about a week. Any additions, comments on the minutes as presented? Entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Any more discussion? All in favor of approving the printed minutes? Motion carries. All right, what brings us to the financial reports? Any questions, comments regarding those? I'd like to make a motion to approve as a block.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Wyatt. Any more discussion? All in favor of approving the financial reports as presented, raise your hand. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, that brings us to the public comment time. Anybody wishing to speak to the board, please come up, state your name, where you live. Try to keep these to 3 to 5 minutes, so help us out.
Good evening, gentlemen. Jennifer Whitaker, Whitaker Road. I'm coming to you this evening and can be considered one of those concerned citizens, especially after what I witnessed prior to the meeting last month. I attended the meeting last month for the first time in 2022, and I'm very concerned about the behavior I witnessed. As I walked up to the stairs to approach the auditorium, Mr. Robinson, you approached Mr. Easter and offered him this pacifier for his whining. You made quite the impression with such juvenile behavior. You were elected by the citizens in Amelia County to represent them well. Mr. Robinson, your behavior is an embarrassment to the office in which you were elected. I encourage all of you to treat each other with respect. No, you're not going to all agree all of the time, but we need to treat each other with respect, which is just fundamental. With regards to wearing a jacket and tie, your behavior speaks louder than your jacket and your tie. Mr. Robinson, you've made quite the impression on me, and at this point, I'm just glad you don't represent me. I'll leave this here for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whitaker. Anybody else like to speak?
Hello, Martin Conkle, 16211 Church Street, right here in the village. All right, so we can air that out, hug it out, shake hands, be friends now after that. Like, I still got one of the supervisors who used to be on the board call me a liar, manipulator on Facebook. You know, I got tough skin, I can take it, whatever. So let's put that in the past, talk about something that actually is kind of important and really matters. The budget is coming up. This is probably a big thing that we really need to focus on. And I just want to make a reminder to the board members and bring it up in front of the rest of the county. Our biggest budget, our biggest expenditure is our school system. There are a lot of people in this county that do not have children in the school system. We pay for it, we need it. It's a public service. But, and there's always been fear in the past to maybe touch that. Just give them what they want, let it happen, give the teacher raises, all that stuff. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. But there's people in this county that care about that kind of stuff. And I really hope as we're reviewing this budget stuff that each supervisor is really digging down to the budget. Why? And I'm sorry, it's nothing against the teachers, but our teachers get paid more than Chesterfield County schools last time I heard was in the paper. I mean, I'm not saying they should get paid at all. I'm not saying, but why? Why are we always throwing money at this kind of stuff? And I know some parents and the people in the school system are going to say otherwise, and they're going to want everything. And I think there's a compromise there because there's other people on that side, like myself, that realize that the quickest way to financial ruin for this county is probably through the school system. Do I need to even bring up the name Jack McKinley from a few years ago and how that went? So I just really hope we're doing our due diligence as we move forward with this budget process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conkle. Anyone else? Harvey, do we?
That's Mickey Hodges, 13011 Butler's Road. I didn't really prepare to speak, but I had a couple topics that I on my mind. First one is I've been kind of looking into the FOIA and information technology systems of the county. And I'd like to make a recommendation because I'm looking at it from what I can tell. We have some, there was a committee formed last year. Hasn't been much traction done with it. The presentation that came out of that had some holes in it. Speaking from somebody that lives in this field, I would suggest the county gets an independent third party come in and do an analysis on the system that can give you industry standard exposures, threats, any kind of activity that needs to be done to protect the information that's in those systems, which has jurisdictional data, it has personnel data, it has citizens data. Right now, from what I can tell, it's the responsibility that y'all have to protect the information, not to the fullest. And so having third party that's not benefiting, the committee can be made of core people that govern. And we've had some folks on the past on the board that's participated on the committees, and they have acted like experts, put on a cap. But you really need to reach out and get experts to come in and look at your systems and give you a true analysis, lay out a plan, what's critical needs to be approached, what can be weighed, and what's nice to have, that kind of thing, and get your system shored up, because I think it's got a lot of holes in it. The second thing, real quick, I know y'all voted on the workshops to be, kind of laissez-faire, whenever you want to do them, kind of thing. I found value in those workshops. I think other people probably do too, because we broadcast them. I think it sends the wrong message. Kind of, we want the government to kind of show more openness and more, there's already mistrust in government anyway. That's always there, right? And so having these types of workshops open just presents a good persona of I'm open, I'm willing to work with the citizens. We're not hiding anything. So whether or not you are or not, it doesn't matter. It just gives a good, reach to the community, I think. That's just my opinion. So that's it. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges. Anyone else?
Grace Wyant, 18601 Patrick Henry Highway, District 3. I just want to speak to the budget and the school system. And I have been teaching in this county for 15 years. And I can tell you this, under our old boards, we didn't get raises. I went 5 years without a raise. I could have left this county, but I didn't. And the only reason I'm here is because I love these children. I could go across the river, make $6,000 to $10,000 more easily, but I'm here for these kids. And if anybody thinks that there's frivolous spending in the schools, needs to grace those doors. You come in there and see what we do with the little money that we are given. Teachers are staying late. They come in early. We work weekends and nights. We've gone through a pandemic and we have made it with these children. We're seeing some amazing growth. So if you don't invest in your children, you're going to have to pay for the outcome later. Uneducated children leads to criminal activity, so we'll be paying more to Piedmont. There is no reason that this county does not support its smallest citizens. They are our future.
Thank you, Ms. White. Anybody else? Darby, do we have any emails or people online?
No, sir.
All right, moving on. Ms. Worley, you're up for the VDOT.
Good evening. I had some highlights to our monthly report this month. Our maintenance group has been performing tree trimming on several select routes throughout the county. We've been doing pothole patching countywide. Our residency, including Chesterfield and Powhatan, we've patched over 3,000 potholes this calendar year. And we'll keep going as long as we can get asphalt and cold patch to do it. We're still doing some tree cleanup from storms earlier in the year in the right-of-way. And we did start a cycle of litter pickup on our primaries starting, it started on March 1st, and that contractor has 30 days to complete the cycle. So hopefully you all have seen some progress on those primaries in the county of Amelia. And then one addition that was not on the report is Route 708 Namazine Road. We've had a contractor jacking a new pipe under the road there. We had a pipe failure about a month ago that we've been nursing and making sure it's safe until that contractor could mobilize. In terms of traffic studies, a couple updates. Route 360 at 153 Military Road. I reported last month that the signal analysis was not warranted, but we were doing some pavement markings and signage out there. And the last signs that were recommended by our traffic engineering group were installed this afternoon. So that work is now complete. And then Route 642, Amelia Springs Road, Booker's Curve. We had installed curve warning signs back in July, but it was denoting the wrong location. And so those signs were installed last week for Booker's Curve. So now we have two curves on Amelia Springs that have been delineated with those curve warning signs. For construction, the Route 360 bridge replacement is still ongoing. Eastbound bridge, the contractor is working on deck forms and structural steel in preparation for pouring the concrete deck. And that is anticipated to take place around the second week in April. And that project is still on schedule for completion in June, late June of this year. Route 636, Lodore Road, bridge scour repairs similar to what was done on 360 at the Appomattox River. The contractor opted to delay that work until June of this year when they might have more consistent favorable weather. And that schedule and detour information, we'll put that information out in advance of that closure in June. 632 Dykeland Road over Horsepin Branch. Our bridge crews are preparing for that replacement, hoping to start in late April or early May. They've got contracts out for some materials, so they're pending those material deliveries, but that's the schedule, assuming they're able to get those materials in a timely manner. And then two additions to my report are Route 657, Selma Road, the dead-end section on the other side of Genito. That project, the board approved for a rural rustic last year. It's fully funded, and so we're in the process of leasing the equipment for that project and anticipate starting in June of this year. And then finally, we've been awarding paving schedules to contractors for both plant mix and surface treatment throughout the county. The only one that we have an anticipated start date for right now is a full depth reclamation contract for Route 681 Pridesville Road. And that is scheduled to start in late April or early May. And then we've got multiple other surface treatment schedules that will start a little bit later in the summer. And those are my updates if anyone has any questions. Yes, sir. No, sir, they're jacking from underneath the road so that we can keep it open. And then we'll probably have to come back and do some asphalt patching at the location where the pipe was, but we can do it under traffic with a flagging operation.
Any other board members? Mr. Rudd, I'd like to thank you for the silence on Amelia Springs and the drainage work on P Route. Thank you for your prompt attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, that brings us to committee and activity reports. Mr. Jones, would you like to go first?
David.
Did I miss?
Yeah, school board.
Sorry. I'm very sorry, I missed that one. You can have more than 3 minutes, how about that?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Harvey. Our current K-12 enrollment is 1573, pre-K enrollment, pre-K-12 is 1648, and ADM is steady at 1569. Our March school board meeting was conducted this past Monday. At that meeting, several actions were taken. First, we recognized Catherine Wilkinson for her service as a board member since 2008. It's very commendable. We also approved an RFP for school nutrition services. This will begin with the upcoming school year, and this process is required every 5 years. Also at Monday's meeting, the school board approved the fiscal year 23 budget proposal that is based on the more conservative House budget. As you're aware, we will not have the anticipated state funding information until the General Assembly reconvenes and adopts a budget for the next fiscal year. We do look forward to presenting the budget proposal information to you at next week's work session. And Ms. Bullock will address the finance reports for the past month.
Good evening. At this point in the year, we'd anticipate revenues and expenditures to be at about 66%. We're below that right now with revenues and expenditures at 50.35%. We talked before about how we spend carryover funding and how we appropriate that funding as quotes are received. And to date, we have moved carryover funding to purchase two school buses to replace windows and doors in one of the white buildings beside the school board office to allow for record storage. We have put a purchase order in this week for landscaping in the middle school courtyard to allow for an outdoor learning space and to add tables and benches. We hope to use some carryover funding to get the high school painted. That'll probably happen in several phases over spring break and over the summer. Also, the cafeteria's participation has increased tremendously over the last couple of years. We're up almost 35,000 meals this year compared to the same time last year. Because of that, we are going to overspend our cafeteria budget. And so the way the cafeteria works is that we serve meals, we pay for that food, and we are reimbursed from USDA for the meals served. Because participation has increased so much, we are at like 93% of the revenue. And so we have an appropriation request tonight to increase our revenue and expenditure lines for the cafeteria. It doesn't cost anybody any money. We just need to change those numbers and increase them by $375,000 so we can continue to receive income and credit it and pay our bills.
Thank you, Ms. Bullock. Thank you, Ms. Harper. Gentlemen, how do y'all feel about the appropriation?
As it requires no money from the county, I would make a motion that we approve.
Thank you, Mr. Easter. Any more discussion? All those in favor of making this appropriation signify by raising your hand. All right, now we're back on track.
Y'all wait on me.
Go on with your activity reports.
Yes, we had a local CRC meeting today, and Amelia is probably the lowest one on the totem pole about getting grants and stuff because of our location and our proximity to Richmond and Chesterfield, because our income on average is so much higher than surrounding counties to the west. So we got to, we have a little bit more work cut out for us when it comes to getting grants than some other localities do, but that's not to say that we can't get a grant. And that after the meeting, I had two supervisors from different counties come to me, and they said that they envy me in Amelia County, and they don't envy us. And I said, well, what are you talking about? They said, well, we don't envy you because where y'all located. Y'all have so much more problems getting grants than these other counties do. And, that's when I told them, I said, look, that's still a good thing and we need to stay in it and, go for the grants when we can, when we think we can get them. And I said, well, why do you envy us? And they said, because of your location. Y'all have a golden opportunity, being that you're close as you are to Richmond and Chesterfield, for good growth and expanding the county's resources in many different ways because we're so close to Richmond and Chesterfield. And I said, well, that's good and that's bad, just like what we were saying. It's got its good points and it's got its bad points. And they brought up one other thing. They asked me, as a board, do we have any problems or we encountering any problems about false and untrue stories on social media? And I sort of laughed and I said, yes, we do. And they said, well, it seems like every county is having them, that they have board members that put stuff out that's not necessarily true, and the public nowadays is believing a lot of that. And that social media was out here to help people learn and, using it in the right tool. And by putting different cuts and remarks about different people on social media that is not true, is not benefiting us people in the county. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. White?
This month has been slow for me with meetings. I was supposed to have a library meeting last night and I missed the main part of the meeting due to a scheduling conflict, but I caught up down at the end to see if they needed anything from me and what's going on. And they did notify me that they've been applying for grants as well through ARPA's released a lot for everybody. And they were just granted a grant to buy an outdoor picnic table, awning setup. It's all one-piece metal industrial setup. And when the awning and umbrella comes out, it's going to have solar panels on it and a built-in charging station. And they're going to place it outside the library so people can come enjoy the outdoors and charge your accessories, as well as you'll have access to the wireless internet at the library. So there's some more benefit to bring people into that center of the community that we always talk about. That's all I've had so far this month.
Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Robinson?
I'd never been in the Hindle building before, so we all went into there. Me and Taylor and Daryl Goff and 4 of the board members went. We had meetings and looked at it and were discussing what could be done with it. The DPMT meeting I had last month, kind of difficult. I wasn't sure what was going on with that. It was all on over the internet, and I was having a hard time hearing what was going on. And that was pretty much it.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Mr. Easter?
From a meeting standpoint, I think the past month's been kind of standard meetings. I'm tired of hearing me talk about Crossroads. That's the biggest consumer. I look forward to their new director being on, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Easter. February, we called an IT committee meeting. Sean, Mr. Jones, Taylor, and Daryl. We talked about some fiber optic cable we need to get within the buildings, possible new telephone system, file sharing, security, and archives. Later that month, we had planning commission meeting. We did an ordinance review, and last night we had a zoning board. We determined we needed a zoning board meeting. That was last night, and we discussed some future ordinance changes for future development in the sanitary district. Social Services Board this morning, Martha was very pleased, Ms. Pullen was very pleased that they have all their vacancies filled as of April 1st. But with that, Public Works needs to do some in-house renovations new office space. And we had the Piedmont Regional Jail meeting this afternoon. Amelia had 59 residents there in February, up 5 from January. Medical costs was still around 5,500 people we have there. They have 23 security vacancies if anybody's looking for a job. That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, just to add, you had mentioned the telephone system. I believe the CARES Committee appropriated funds to fully upgrade based on a previous estimate. So the money should be there for that. I don't know if y'all are aware of that, but
We left it in the hands of, they were writing, staff is writing the RFP.
should
We
be.
left it at and use those funds when we get to that. All right, next on the list, Meade County Human Resource Personnel Policy.
Administration has updated personnel policy, and I will be sharing with you a brief summary of the changes. Administration solicited and received input during the review process from department heads and constitutional officers. The format has been changed for easier browsing and searching of the electronic document. Changes include updating verbiage in Chapter 3 to reflect changes consistent with the Baker-Tilly salary study, updating Chapter 4 to reflect eligibility for health insurance. Chapter 5 is updated to allow new full-time employees to use earned leave after 30 days of employment. An onboarding checklist has been added to Chapter 6, designed to guide and facilitate new employee onboarding. Reimbursement of education and training requirements have been updated in Chapter 7, along with the addition of a reimbursement agreement. Chapter 8 provides information regarding employee performance evaluations. A new performance evaluation period and timeline have been added to ensure all employees receive a performance evaluation by the end of each calendar year. Various forms have been created or updated. They include interim evaluations for probationary employees, employee self-evaluation forms, training request form, an exemplary contribution form, and notice of improvement needed. We will be seeking approval for these updates.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Gentlemen, so we need to have a motion made to adopt the personnel policy. What's the board's pleasure?
Yeah, Mary Beth and team have done a great job, and they've worked across, as a member of the HR committee, have worked across all county departments, including constitutional officers, and I will happily make a motion to approve the results of that good work.
Thank you, Mr. Easter. Any more discussion? All those in favor of adopting the presented human resource policy update? Raise your hand. Thank you, Ms. Smith, for all the hard work. All right, that brings us to the Farm Bureau Board. I think y'all have a presentation also. Sir, would you introduce yourself? In case everybody don't know you.
Yeah, my name is Jeremy Moyer. I represent the Amelia County Farm Bureau, which is close to 300 producer members that are all residents of the county and agricultural producers. Can you hear me? All right, at our 2020 meeting, we made a resolution that the Amelia County Farm Bureau supports land use taxation for agriculture, horticulture, and forestry. We haven't been able to present to you really because of COVID stuff before now. If you don't know much about land use taxation, the General Assembly created it in 1972, and it's a tax on the actual use of the land, not the actual fair market value of the land. It's not necessarily a tax rate, but you're deferring the tax. If you ever take it out of agricultural forestry production, then the taxes would normally, you have to pay 6 years of back taxes, and then from then on, it would be taxed at its normal rate. And currently, 87 counties and cities in Virginia have already adopted some sort of land use taxation, and all 50 states do have these programs. And in the code, it allows for taxation for agricultural, horticultural, forest, or open space land. Slide. And each locality gets to choose what they want to put land use taxation on. Currently, Amelia, I know it has it on agricultural land, but we do not have it on forested land, and I'm unsure about horticultural or just open land. The whole point, like many of y'all have said to Farm Bureau members, that you want to preserve open spaces, you want to preserve the rural atmosphere of the county and conserve natural resources. That's kind of the point of this. Agriculture and forest land requires much less as far as services from the county. It just needs basic law enforcement and fire protection. And in Amelia, the majority of timber is currently private owned. We're ranked 11th for harvest volume, 13th for the harvest value in the state. So adding forest land to this ordinance would not have much revenue impact. And at the time in the 70s, when this was first passed, the reason that the county decided not to include forested land for land use taxation, because much of the forested land in the county was actually owned by corporations that resided outside of the county. And at the time, I think the board, again, this is before I was even born, but the board didn't want to be giving tax incentives to out of county residents or businesses. So a couple of the benefits, like I've already said, protects the rural setting of the county. It provides tax equity because the amount of services are so much lower than a housing development or commercial property. It's supporting our #1 industry. Currently, we're ranked 8th in the whole state for agriculture. And again, it would have a low impact as far as tax revenue. So a couple other benefits is it slows residential growth. If you're a small or large landowner, if you're paying high taxes, you're more likely to want to sell that for houses versus keep it in timber. Even someone as small as 20 acres of land that they inherited from their parents, if they don't have to pay hardly any taxes on it, they might keep it versus selling it for lots. Studies in the past have shown that residential land requires $1.30 in services for every dollar paid. Farm and forest land is only about 35 cents in services from the county for every dollar paid. And if we incorporated forest land use taxation, the landowner where their home is and that acre would still be taxed like any other resident. They don't get land use taxation for their home. And like I stated before, once your land goes out of land use taxation, you have 6 years of taxes you have to pay on that. And then a couple other benefits of just forested land, you probably know this: carbon sequestration, enhance water quality, stopping erosion, hunting and hiking, and it just helps maintain a rural atmosphere like everyone keeps saying they want to do. Solar farms, development, apartment complexes, that type of thing. There's more incentive for landowners, obviously, to pursue those options if they're losing money in their business, which is owning land and harvesting trees. It's a low margin business. If it's more profitable to own trees, there'll probably be less development. And we're basically asking for forest products to be treated like any other agricultural crop. It's just a longer term crop. Any other questions?
Board members?
Yeah, I have a couple. So come from a farm family, as you know.
I'm not an expert, but
Okay.
there might be people in the audience who could also answer your question.
Okay, that's fair. So these are just questions that I have. I was just jotting. It was nice y'all to give us this as we walked in. We haven't had a lot of time to look at it. So you don't have to answer these now, but I'll just say these are the questions that I have as you ask us to consider this going forward. So if I understand the 87 counties that you're talking about that have land use, Amelia would fall into that today because you said that have some type of land use policy. Do you have any data, or can you get at the future, of those 87, particularly surrounding counties, what's the mix of ones that treat forest land the same as all other agriculture or not? Just so we kind of understand where we really fall.
I believe Powhatan.
Powhatan
I'm sure you've heard of them before.
Yes.
One way that county, I think, makes up for some of the lost revenue from the taxation of forest land is personal property taxes, which is a more equitable way to tax people.
Yeah.
If you're renting a home and you own a car, but you have kids, you're using the school system, you're using a lot more county services than you're actually paying in. So that's a way to balance the tax burden on all the citizens.
And I agree with you on that, again, from farm family, and totally get your data here about usage versus paying. And so I agree with that. I was trying to reconcile that, though. There's a couple of statements in here that says this would have no revenue impact to the county. I don't know that I understand how that can be if it's, as you said, I mean, you just were saying what Powhatan did to offset the revenue loss. Feels to me there would be a revenue loss to Amelia that we would have to make up in increasing other taxes. But I might not be understanding that since it does say a couple times in the presentation.
That's more looking to the future. I don't know how many houses we add every single year.
Mm-hmm.
But as data shows, most of those homes require $1.30 of services for every dollar they pay in revenue. So obviously we're going to have to tax more and more just to have county services for the increasing population. So going forward, if you're incentivizing and hopefully slowing the growth, you're actually going to not have to increase taxes or in spending like you currently would be. It's kind of an ambiguous statement. Again, I'm not an expert.
Okay, I think that's something we need to better understand as we go forward. I mean, yeah, because I don't see how, like in this adding forest land to the ordinance has no revenue impact at this time. I'm not saying I'm against it, by the way. Again, I totally buy your arguments here. I think it'll be important for us to understand what is the revenue impact. And then unless we plan to cut services to citizens, where we make that funding up from. And I think that'll be a big piece.
One
for us to
consideration
understand.
would be to extrapolate that out with a couple different projections for 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
Where we might end up in that time frame, not just look at it as next year's budget.
I agree.
If you're slowing growth by 1%, 5%,
right,
and you would just have to be a judgment call. I don't know what our growth is currently, and
yeah,
I'm sure they could easily pull up what land would actually be taxed at.
Yeah, again, I think what you're saying is what I agree with too. I think you're talking about a really fun project for our Director of Finance and Commissioner of Revenue to pull off to pull all this data together and give us something really good to look at.
There's also currently a bill in the House Bill 180 and Senate Bill 184 that Governor Youngkin has until April 11th to sign, that is actually establishing a fund with state money that will help reimburse counties for any potential lost revenue from land use taxation, specifically for forested land. It just passed the General Assembly this session.
That's interesting. I'll say this question, but assume it goes to Commissioner of Revenue and Director of Finance. But I think one thing then would be for us to look at the acreage in forest land, how much is owned by Amelia citizens or businesses versus outside. Because I remember my dad talking about the same history lesson you were talking about from before. I imagine that has changed quite a bit, and that would be really interesting for us to look at.
Yes, and this would benefit someone owning 10,000 acres, but also someone owning
Right.
just 20 acres, 50 acres.
Yeah. And then this one's just more of a process. So if the business or individual who owned the timber resides outside of Amelia, when they sell the timber, how does Amelia get the tax back from that then? Because we usually charge business taxes or land, your land value taxes. How would we get the money back from someone who's living outside of that? I'm just asking about how it works today more than anything else.
I'm not sure. They've paid 35, they've paid $1 of taxes and cost the county 35 cents. So you're making 65 cents off of them anyway. Do they really owe you any more money?
But if we change it to where they get a significant reduction, as you said, the value is then at the time they sell, then I think that becomes more relevant to figure out, would that mean they just don't pay anything to Amelia or not? So like I said, I'm not expecting to answer all of these. I'm just trying to share. I take this very seriously and am truly interested in the topic. I've actually had a conversation with another large landowner within the last 2 weeks. I'd already been thinking about this, and it was great to see it come forward today. And so I look forward to learning more about it and seeing what Amelia might be able to do in the future.
If you have any specific questions, Farm Bureau can probably find the answer for you. Either contact the office or get a hold of me and I can get the question to the right person.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Gentlemen, is this something that we may consider this year, or I know Carla Steve is busy with the budget. Probably after we get through that, let her do some research and Ms. Wash and come back with something. Hey, gentlemen. Hayes. Hayes have a presentation of the 23 budget.
Oh, can you hear me good? Sounded all right for Jeremy, so I guess it's loud enough. For those who don't know me, I'm Carla Cave, the finance director here, and I'm going to discuss the fiscal year 2023 budget. It's a $43 million budget, so I could probably talk about it for an hour or more, but for your sake and mine, I'm going to keep it as brief as possible. I've got about 8 or 9 slides here for you. Here's a picture from our Field Days of the Past, first year held in Amelia. Thought it was pretty awesome. Showcase it on the first slide. Do you all have this in front of you?
Yes.
Brenda, print it out for you.
Yep, both.
We have it on.
Okay, great. Okay, before we begin, I just want to make a few notes about what is and is not included in this budget. I'm going to talk about it very high level, but I really, really encourage everyone, and Wayne, please put this in the monitor. I want all citizens who want to know all the details about line by line, where does this department spend their money, where does this revenue come from, please go to the finance department site on our main website and click on a ClearGov budget link. It'll give you all the details you ever want to know about this budget. But tonight we'll just talk high level. This budget contains no increase to the real estate rate, so it's still based on that 51 cent. My voice is shaking. I haven't done this in a while. When we look at personal property rate, we haven't discussed a tax increase or decrease specifically, but if you recall last month, the Commissioner of Revenue did bring to your attention the increase of about 40% that's coming on assessed values for vehicles. And Mr. Wyatt had mentioned to help out the citizens, which I appreciated as a taxpayer, the 30% decrease in the tax rate. So I did go ahead and factor that in. So rather than using the $4.15 tax rate, the 30% decrease brought it down to $3.32. That does lose the county $720,000. And of course, we can play with that if we think that's too big of a loss. But I did include that 30% decrease here. It does contain a 7% cost of living increase. And while that is much higher than we've ever received in at least 10 years, I'm sure you all know, our inflation rate is about 8% right now. It's 7.9 CPI, Consumer Price Index. That 7% cost of living on local salaries costs the county $355,000. When we have our budget workshops, I can bring you a few other cost scenarios if we think that's out of our realm. This budget does contain 3 fewer full-time positions than the current year. We had a few new positions included that we never saw the need to fund, so I went ahead and took those out. That saved us $215,000. And the way this budget was put together was we solicited input from every department and fully funded all of their non-personnel requests. So everything that a department asks for and needs is included here, except for new staff and additional salary increases on top of the COLA. It does fully fund the school's budget request, and it also fully funds every agency's request. Going back to that ClearGov note, if you want to look at all the agencies we contribute to, you know, we give 5,000 here, 4,000 here. It's in its own department called regional contribution. So you can look at all of their letters of request, what they do for Amelia County citizens. That's all on the website. And then this does include $2.3 million more than our current year capital improvement plan. The board honestly hasn't really talked about CIP yet. I'm sure that'll come in a workshop, so that's based on Planning Commission figures. Sean will fix the slide. 1 second. Thank you. Okay, so here's the look at the countywide budget breakdown by our 4 largest funds. We've got our general fund at $15.4 million. It actually comes into just about $50,000 increase, which is crazy, but with those decrease of positions, and the schools have mentioned we're running into the same thing. We've had some vehicles in the budget that we had planned for. We're unable to get those, just supply chain issues. Looking at the capital improvement fund, we've got the increase of $2.2 million. Our water and sewer fund was actually able to decrease its expenses $10,000. And our school funds are looking at a $23.2 million bottom line for a $2.2 million increase. And I'm going to touch on these in more detail later. But we're looking at the total budget of $43.5 million, a 12% increase over current year. All right, so where does our revenue come from? In general, we're looking at a $3.3 million increase in revenue across all funds. So 50% of our revenue across the whole county comes from the state and federal government. Most of that goes to the schools, some of it, a small portion to the county. So that's 50% of our revenue. We get 29% in personal, or not just personal, but all property taxes, and then 21% comes from other local sources, which does include landfill fees. So that's a big chunk of that. And to the right, you can see the comparison that each of these 3 types of revenue are increasing and the amounts under it. A little over $1 million in property taxes. Like I mentioned before, there's no increase to the rates, but working in the same office as our building inspections, I've just seen the number. I mean, we're having a huge amount of growth, which is going to lead to higher assessed values in the future. We've also budgeted a little conservatively in that line in the past, so I just went ahead and looked at what have we actually collected, and let's go from there. Be more realistic with it. Our other 2 figures are increasing by $834,000 on other local and $1.4 million on state and federal. All right, so we can dig into the general fund budget here. I've got a breakdown of the revenues and the expenditures, but as you can see here, our expenditures are outweighing our revenue by a little over $2 million. So I've got some notes to the right I'm going to go over. Our general fund expenses make up about 36% of the countywide budget. Nothing crazy there, it's pretty normal. This proposed budget would need to pull $2 million out of what we call our reserves, our unassigned general fund balance. That's what we talk about year after year. The goal is to have about 2 months worth of backup there in case something catastrophic happened. We had to fund our expenses with no revenue. So in FY21, which that audit we just received, we ended up decreasing our unassigned general fund balance by $766,000. And if you recall, in January, I believe, maybe December, we adopted a policy to keep our unassigned fund balance at 30%. In the past, it's been much higher, but as of this January, we lowered it to 30%. So we moved that $1 million, it was a little over $1 million, into CIP. Our current year budget, FY22, when we went through this budget process, we adopted the budget with having to pull 2.6 million out of unassigned fund balance. I know we're only in February, where I was looking at the February expenditures and revenues. It doesn't look like that's going to be our reality, so that's good news. But it's still a little too early to tell if we're going to need to pull $1 million out. Hopefully, it'll be less than $1 million. And that's due to those unfunded positions. We're unable to purchase some vehicles. The school transfer is currently under budget because the school's expenses are under budget. So a lot of different scenarios make that up, but it is a good thing. And my recommendation would be we try to balance this budget, just either increase our revenues, decrease our revenues to come to a more balanced budget this year. Okay, so general fund expenditures, where are they going? So on the left, you'll see which departments are receiving the biggest amounts. A third of our expenses are going to education. That's mostly the transfer to the schools. And a quarter of our expenses are going to public safety. So that's not only the sheriff, but also the fire department, the rescue squad, animal control, building inspections. There's a few departments in there. And Health and Human Services gets 12%. That's mostly made up of the social services budget. The rest fall in under 10%, as you would imagine. And the types of expenses that your general fund dollars are going to are 35% to transfer. That's to the schools. And the other large one is about $300,000 that does support our water and sewer fund because it's not self-supporting. And then another third is the operating costs, 32%, and 22% are spent on salaries and wages, with employee benefits and capital outlay bringing in the rest. All right, next we'll look at the schools. They're the biggest part of the budget. We've got the breakdown. They receive state, federal, local, and then money from the board to make up their total budget of $23.2 million. And if you've been cluing in to all the school meetings, I'm sure you'll know that there are 3 versions of the school budget out there, and really no one knows what the General Assembly is going to adopt. So our school has gone with the House version, and that's what the school board adopted at their Monday night meeting. So that's what this represents. It is the most conservative and by that I mean it provides the least amount of state funds. So it's based on an average daily membership of 1,540, which is lower than what I heard earlier tonight. And as most of you know, if the ADM increases, our state money increases. If our ADM goes down, we'll get less state funding. Our school fund expenses make up 53% of the countywide budget. I always like to touch on the Department of Ed has a required local effort listed based on your ADM. That for FY23 is $4.7 million, and the request for just the operating funds for the proposed budget is 63% higher. And I say that in a positive light because I think it's great that in the past, Amelia has always given a decent amount higher than the required local effort. This year, the local request is for $1 million more this year than last year, $1,000,036. That includes our operating transfer and about $75,000 for the textbook fund. So those are combined in that $7.8 million request for local funding. And just a little history for those in the crowd of how that transfer does work. So Virginia law requires a school board's revenue and expenditures to equal, and they end their year with a 0 fund balance. So each month, the excess of expenditures that they have is made up by our local transfer. At the end of the year, anything that had been budgeted for local transfer that didn't need to happen is returned to the general fund. So that's what we call carryover funds when people hear that. And in FY22, the year we're in now, the county gave the schools $502,000 in carryover funds from unused FY21 funding and $1 million in FY21 for unused FY20 funds. So we have been in the practice recently of providing that carryover back to the schools. All right, the last big fund we're going to talk about is the CIP. That makes up just 9% of the countywide budget, and it's primarily funded by the landfill host fees we receive each month. Right now, we're averaging like $250,000 a month, which is great. That has not always been in the case in the past. But we're budgeting for next year $3.3 million in revenue from waste management. I just pulled $4 million as a rough figure, but it's based on the Planning Commission receiving $8.9 million in requests, and they gave each request a low, medium, or high priority. Those high priorities added up to a little over $4 million. So those are not approved until the board adopts those funds through the budget. And we've got about $9.5 million in our CIP fund, just FYI, to spend on projects like this. That's all I've got for the numbers, but looking at where we're going forward with this, we started this process back in February, and we had on February 4th, all of the agencies, departments, constitutional officers, schools, although schools still don't know their final figures, but everybody submitted what they had for their budget. I've been putting that together up until Tuesday, yesterday. I'm here tonight to present, and then we have a workshop scheduled next Wednesday where some department heads will bring additional requests to the board, mostly for additional personnel or additional salary. And the schools will come and talk about their budget. Hopefully they'll have some updated info. And then the following Tuesday, March 29th, we have another budget workshop where hopefully we can pare down what we want to advertise for public citizens to give input on. April 20th, which is our next regularly scheduled meeting, we're going to have the public hearing, unless you choose another date. This is just what I've put together. And then we have always tried to help accommodate the schools in the past with teacher contracts by approving the budget by May 1st. The more time they have to figure out what their bottom line is, the more time they can get their teacher contracts together and help recruit for next year. So if you have any questions on anything I had tonight, I can answer those, and we can go into a lot more detail in the workshops.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. That was very impressive. Thank you for the work on that.
You're welcome.
Well, gentlemen, it looks like we get to have a workshop. I hope everybody's happy.
Oh, and one more thing. I think the typical way we handle this is to continue tonight's meeting to next Wednesday for the workshop when you go to adjourn.
Thank you, ma'am.
Although to be fair, we've usually done the workshops in addition to the budget ones, so a little bit different.
Ms. Kay gave us the 2 dates. Continue meeting or workshop, whichever way we phrase it. 323 and 329. I want to do these during the daytime around 2 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Are those different than
That's fine. I think she had times already scheduled.
I was saying we do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then the 29th, you scheduled for 3 to 5.
Is that fine with everybody?
Yeah, we'd already agreed.
Okay. All right, moving on. Mr. Harrison, you want to give us your request?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Many of you know I had a part-time employee for quite some time, about 2 years now, who had about 40 years experience as a Commonwealth's attorney. He's decided to retire. He has done so, and the 2019 budget that was passed and is continued on says that if a county has 10 or more cameras, then a position has to be funded by the locality to pay for that position. I opted to begin with part-time because I knew I had a gentleman who wanted part-time, who was coming in and who could do it and would be very quick at getting this stuff done. Well, 2 years ago, we had 11 cameras. Now we have 31 cameras, which if I've got an hour video to watch, by the time I go through that hour video, it takes me about 2 hours because you got to play back, you got to listen, you got to pick up on all the nuances. So that's a very time-consuming event. What I'm asking is that that the board approve a full-time position for me, fund it now. I do not anticipate having it filled in the next 30 days or probably the next 60 days. It'll probably be closer to the end of the budget cycle in order to get somebody, but I would need to be able to advertise it now in order to try and find somebody who's willing to come and do this. Hopefully find somebody with some experience and not somebody who's fresh out of law school who I'm have to spend all my time teaching this stuff to. So I'm asking for it now so that I can get it out there so that I can begin the process of trying to get somebody in. The last I checked with the comp board, because you're required to pay the same as a level 1 assistant Commonwealth attorney, the cost was like $58,158. But I don't have the new budget out. I don't know if they're increasing it. There was talk that they were going to. Again, until they pass a budget, I can't give you a definite figure.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Can you just explain to the crew, when you say cameras, it's actually the body cam?
Body
footage
cameras,
that the
yes,
deputies wear?
that the deputies wear.
Okay.
And sometimes if the state police come to an accident scene and they've got because they only have car cameras on, that we have to watch that also, and any in-car camera stuff, state police.
Okay.
That was related to what my other question was going to be, but I didn't quite understand though. What amount do you have to watch? Like, what's the trigger for when you have to watch the camera?
I have to watch everything because I'm required to, my office is required to review it. If there's anything that we consider exculpatory or might be exculpatory, we have to notify defense counsel that this is in the video and they can.
But that everything for a case, or if they work 8 hours, you're watching the full 8 hours, regardless of whether they're sitting.
No, it's just if
radar.
If there's, let's use DUI for an example. There's a DUI, when the officer pulls up, he turns on his camera. If there's 3 officers, there's 3 cameras I have to watch. Generally, it takes 3 to 4 hours for one DUI. So if I've got 3 officers there and everybody's running their camera, then that's 12 hours worth of camera footage that I've got to watch all of.
Yeah, I didn't understand the part of they get an option of when to turn the camera on and off. I thought the point was it was on.
Yeah,
they can choose to turn it off.
The minute they get there, they're supposed to turn it on, and the minute they finish, they turn it off.
Thank you.
So if it's an hour, it's an hour. If it's 10 minutes, it's 10 minutes.
Right.
Whatever the amount of time is that they're interacting with these individuals.
Thank you.
You said possibly the state was going to set a salary for this? But you need.
Will.
That will.
We'll set the salary.
Yes. Right now, it's at, the best I can tell from the comp board that I looked up today, is $58,158. But they haven't approved the budget yet. I don't know if they're giving a pay increase. There is talk of a pay increase of 5%. Until the budget comes through, you really don't know what the bottom dollar is. But if you approve it today, then I can start process of trying to find somebody, because it's not going to be tomorrow that there's somebody going to walk in and say, hey, I want a job.
Are we funding the whole 58 or?
Yes, sir. You have to fund the
Okay. Not
entire
the
amount.
part-time guys?
Part-time guy was at $27 an hour because that was half of what the state said would be paid.
Okay.
And I did it part-time because I knew I had somebody coming in that could do it and would help out and could do it quickly. I don't know what I'm gonna get now.
But while we're funding the whole thing, the additional impact to the budget is only for that.
Only
other
for that
half.
difference.
Right, it's
for
the
half, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Based on this bill, I mean, we're required to fund it. We really don't have a choice. It's a matter of whether we let him go ahead and hire somebody or we have to put it in next year's budget. Either way. I mean, the sooner the better for their office.
But the body cameras work both ways. I mean, it
Yes.
works like the DUI, but it also works if somebody tries to pimp something on an officer, so.
Oh, yes,
Protects our-
one of the things is so that there's not complaints also against the officer that are unfounded. We've had complaints that the officer did such and such, and you look at the body camera, and that's not so. And occasionally we tell them, if you're transporting a prisoner and that prisoner's a problem, cut your body camera on the entire time you transport him so that there can be no complaint. But then again, my officer's got to watch all that in order to determine if there is something, if a complaint comes in.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
What is the board's pleasure? Somebody want to put this in form of a motion?
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and fund the position. I see the need for it. And as we said, it does protect our officers as well. And it would definitely alleviate the stress of Commonwealth Attorney's Office having to do it without the position that's already required by law anyway.
All right, does everybody understand the motion?
Yes, sir.
All those in favor? Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Carries. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. All right, that ends the new business. We'll get into the old business. Sheriff's Office has a request for a safe extended area. Anybody here to speak on that?
It's working. Okay. Borgerback was going to try to make it if he could. I guess he couldn't. So I'll wing this one. Basically, they're wanting to dedicate a space or two in the parking lot by Wells Fargo because people are buying so many things on Facebook Marketplace and need a safe place to meet. They just want to dedicate those spots and put a camera up for people to do those exchanges safely. And it would be no cost to us. They got a grant from Walmart, and that's what they're wanting to use that money for.
I've seen it be very successful in surrounding counties. My family's actually used some of the spaces in Chesterfield when they're meeting somebody to buy or sell something there. Easy service to provide.
Was everybody clear on the photos in the board book of where they're at? Anybody want to put that in the form of a motion?
Be happy to make a motion to approve the sheriff's request for the safe spaces.
Thank you, Mr. Easter. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Okay. All right. Building official appointment. Harvey, do you want to handle this?
If Mr. Jones and Jerry Wayne Williams would come forward to the podium there. This issue is twofold tonight. We need to appoint a new building official because Mr. Jones is retiring at the end of the month. And his replacement, Mr. Williams, is here to be recognized as a new employee. Plus, as Mr. Jones, I think, is going to explain, he needs to be officially appointed by the Board of Supervisors to fill his role. Mr. Jones?
Gentlemen, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Jerry Williams to the building department. While Jerry's no stranger to the county, he's worked the last 16 years in the maintenance department, and now he gets to wear a different hat. for the legal issue per section 105.1 of the building code, the local governing body is required to appoint a building official. For a second, I would like to thank the board for the opportunity afforded me by appointing me as the building official some years ago. Amelia County is a great place to work, and I will miss the interaction with staff, citizens, and contractors. The county administrator, staff, and the board has been so very supportive, and I'm sure that they will do so with Jerry as well. As my retirement date is March 31, I would think that Jerry would be appointed to Amelia County building official effective April 1. Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Congratulations on retirement.
Congratulations to you, Jerry. All right, we have a appointment on,
I'll make a motion to approve Jerry Wayne
okay,
for a building official.
all right. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Any more discussion? All those in favor of appointing Jerry Wayne Williams to building official, raise your hand. Right, motion carries.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if we could bring Mr. Jones either back to the podium or up to the American flag, we've actually got a plaque for him from the Board of Supervisors. Appreciation award to Richard T. Jones and appreciation for outstanding service to the Amelia County Building Department as the building official. Thank you for everything 2006 to 2022. So, Mr. Jones, Mr. Phelps, do you want me to go down there and give it to him, or would you like to give it to him beside the American flag and take a good picture? There you go. There you go.
Richard Jones was hired January 2006 as a building inspector and was promoted to building official in March of 2010. That's 16 years and 3 months of dedicated service. The building official is responsible for enforcement of all regulatory codes and ordinances pertaining to building construction, electrical and plumbing installation, and condemnation and demolition of buildings and structures. In addition, the building official also has managerial office duties such as supervising and leading staff and setting daily objectives and guidelines.
Thank you for reading that, Mr. Wyatt. All right, we have a special event permit.
Yes, we have a special event permit request for Amelia Day to take place Saturday, May 7th, with the actual festival from 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then a dance in the courthouse square from 6:30 p.m. until 11 p.m. They are also requesting a road closure resolution. They do this every year for the 4 streets around the courthouse square, and that's in your book as well. They're expecting about 2,000 people, and all of the vendors will be required for getting their own health department permits. There will be no alcoholic beverages sold. And this was circulated to all the department heads, the sheriff's office. Becky has already gotten in touch with them to hire 2 off-duty deputies for that day. The rescue squad will keep 1 ambulance there for the entire event, and we'll try and plan for a second one as well, unless they get another call. Emergency management, no concerns. They should have someone monitoring for severe weather, particularly if there is any in the forecast for that day, and plans for notifying their patrons if that happens. And Public Works has no issues.
Thank you, Ms. Steele. What's your board's pleasure? Somebody want to put that in a motion?
Make a motion that we pass it.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Motion on the floor to pass the special permit for Amelia Day.
along with the road closure resolution.
Along with the road closure. Any more discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of most of our agenda. Let's move into the two amendments we made, the committee appointments. Mr. Easter, since you were first, I'll let you go.
All right, thank you. As I mentioned in the January meeting, Renee Winfrey is retiring from the Planning Commission. She served us for a number of years, which we are very grateful for and thank her for her service. And she has remained in place, so there was no gap until we appointed a new member from District 4 to take her position. And I have shared the bio and information with the board members that I would like to nominate Jennifer Harris as the new Planning Commission member from District 4.
Thank you, Mr. Easter. That's in the form of a motion.
It is, yes. Thank you.
Any more discussion? All in favor of appointing Ms. Harris to the Planning Commission, raise your hand. No?
I think it should be discussed a little bit more. Most of us don't even know her.
Okay, Mr. Jones. We called for discussion. Did everybody vote?
Vote was 4-0. I think that settled it. Mr. Gore could help. I think if you want to bring something back up that's already been settled, somebody who voted in the affirmative needs to cause that to happen.
Correct.
Does anybody want to bring it back up for another discussion?
Yeah, I want to bring it up for another discussion.
Mr. Jones didn't vote in the affirmative.
Okay.
I can bring it back up and we can discuss it.
Is that what you want to do, Mr. Robinson?
Yeah, let's try it.
Do we need a motion to bring it back up, or?
I'll defer to Mr. Gore.
Mr. Chair, it's a motion to reconsider, and Mr. Harvey's right. A board member who voted on the prevailing side of the motion that was adopted has to be the one to bring up a motion to reconsider. So if that motion to reconsider is made and adopted, then that matter is back before the board for subsequent action.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gore.
I have one question on that. Does everyone vote on the motion to reconsider, or only those who voted in the affirmative the first time?
Everyone, it takes a majority vote to approve it.
Thank you.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor. All in favor of reconsidering the motion for discussion, raise your hand. Carries. We'll open the floor back up for discussion. Mr. Jones, you want to start that?
Well, I just think that someone having this position, we need to know a little bit more about them. I mean, you know, who is she? I mean, I don't know nothing about the woman, not a thing.
Did you receive?
You received the bio?
Yes, but you know, you can write anything down. You need to talk to her.
Mr. Easter, do you have any more information on Ms. Harris that you could share?
She gave a very thorough resume and bio. If you're saying we can write anything down, I'm certainly not questioning her facts and accuracy of that. If you want to talk to her, feel free. That's why we sent it out in advance. Follow the process that we've agreed to a T.
Thank you, Ms. Easter. Mr. Jones?
Mr. Chairman, I could add, I've actually known Jennifer for a long time, and she's very active in the community, and anybody that's active in the community knows her. She's become a voice for the parents at the school systems over the last couple of years, and has got a lot done. She's been great at that. As well as Renee, the current setting member, actually recommended Ms. Harris for the position. So, I mean, to me, I have a lot of respect for Ms. Winfrey, and I trust her recommendation as well, even if I didn't know Ms. Harris myself.
Ms. Harris is also on the library board. as another way that she already serves the community and is well-known to citizens who are involved in the community.
Thank you, Mr. Easter and Mr. White. Mr. Jones, does that help you with that?
Okay, this opening has been advertised for quite a while, hasn't it? I mean, since first of the year.
2 months, yes.
Has there been anybody else that has talked to the supervisor in that district that was thinking about it?
Question for you, Mr. Easter. Did you?
Or is this the only person?
Oh, it is not the only person. I spoke to a number of people and have selected Ms. Harris based on both my recommendation and, as Mr. Wyatt said, Ms. Winfrey's recommendation. I know you've seen the results of the FOIA request as well, so you know the answer to all these questions.
Well, I would take Ms. Winfrey's recommendation before I would take yours. So
I understand that.
Renee,
you're dragging Ms. Harris
right.
through
I've
this.
known her all my life. Renee's a pretty good, decent person, and I could be satisfied with Renee is. I just didn't want to leave somebody out that somebody else might not want in there, and they was discouraged from trying to get this job. If you follow my drift, what I'm trying to say here,
Thank you.
it could be more than one.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you, mate. Appreciate the discussion, all of us gentlemen. Mr. Easter, would you like to remake your motion?
Yes, I would like to nominate Jennifer Harris for the open position on District 4 on the Planning Commission.
Any more discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor of appointing Ms. Harris to the Planning Commission, raise your hand. Opposed? What was the vote, Mr. Harvey?
That was 5-0.
Can I confirm, is this effective today? Planning Commission stuff has already gone out. Is Renee finishing out the month
Yes.
or she is? Okay,
We'll make
so as of
we'll
April
make it
1st.
effective April 1st to continue the rest of the open term. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Second committee appointment, Mr. Robinson, you have one?
Yeah, I would like to appoint Walt Townsend back to the EDA board. His bio and stuff was sent out March 9th, all the board members. He was previously there. Talked to some of the members in the EDA, and they would be more than happy to have him back.
Okay. Are you putting that in form of a motion?
Yes, sir, I am.
Any discussion?
Yes, sir. Yes. I have a significant concern that the nomination came out on the same day that someone resigned, leaving not only the opportunity for the board members here not to even know of the resignation beforehand, but that means that the important point that Mr. Jones was just bringing up is no citizens have had the opportunity to express their interest in this position. Citizens didn't know until today that the position was even open. This position on the EDA is the only one in the county other than the Board of Supervisors that can actually spend county funds, can commit the county to new loans, can buy and sell land. It is a very important position. It is at large, which means every citizen in the entire county is eligible for that position. And due to the importance and the fact that all 13,000 or so adults, I should clarify, in the county are eligible, I do not believe we have done citizens a good service if this deal were to go through.
Thank you, Mr. Easter. Any more discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
What's the deal?
Nomination.
I have talked to some EDA members, and they all said that Walter Townsend was a great addition to the EDA, and that they would really appreciate to have him back on there again, because he got dismissed under some circumstances that may have been questionable.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I'd just like to say that I think it's important that we remember that this is the People's Committee and not our committee. I just feel that nobody's known about this and we're doing them a disservice. I currently have one citizen that reached out to me today about submitting a resume for the position. And I mean, I would assume that we would have let the public know about it tonight, give it at least a month, share bios, get it all together, and then bring it back. I think it's only fair to the people that they know the position's open, as well as allow the input from them like we have on the other positions, before we just rush it and vote somebody on, because it's not our committee to do such. It's the Citizens Committee.
Mr. Chair, may I clarify one point that was brought up? Mr. Townsend was not dismissed. He fulfilled his full term and simply wasn't renewed. I don't want to tarnish his image in such a way. And also to clarify that not only, as Mr. White said, does the citizens not have an opportunity, several board members didn't either, since the nomination went out before we even knew there was an opening. So we had no opportunity. And finally, that the nominee lives in my own district, but I was not, again, aware or have any knowledge of this whatsoever, which is counter to our typical practice as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Easton. Mr. Robinson, would you like to pull your nomination back and we hold it for 30 days and let the other?
It can be the board's desire, whatever they desire.
You have to pull your nomination.
No, we'll go with it.
Okay.
To be clear, what was just harped on about my nominee is now apparently acceptable for this one. We drug a woman through the mud a few minutes ago simply because I made the nomination. I think we need to clarify that.
Right, well,
No one
Mr. Chairman?
drug no one through the mud. That is your interpretation of it. I
Mr.
mean,
Chair?
not all of us are scared of you.
Hold on, Mr. Robinson. Mr. Jones has the floor.
And that he was kicked off the EDA by two board members here and a follower. Now, nobody wants to else stand up with enough, you know, what's around here to tell you what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. But I remember when you was a little boy.
Good, but the fact.
I mean,
don't
I
support
didn't
what you just
drag
said.
no lady's name through the mud. There you go, putting words in people's mouth like you do on social media all the time.
All right, gentlemen. All right, gentlemen.
Well, I'm not scared of it.
Enjoy. Nor am I.
Yes.
Not to drag people through the mud. You're bringing this up in public. I'm not.
It's on Facebook.
Said nothing about him on Facebook. His name's not been mentioned once by me on Facebook.
Okay. We have a vote, please.
All right, you got a motion on the floor to nominate Walt Townsend for the EDA. In favor? Say aye. Those opposed? It failed, but we will look for appointments next month. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Harvey, time for your administrative report.
Yes, sir. The waste management check for the month was $241,091. That was up from the January level. The CRC, the DMV Select is in the book. $4,306 for the month was paid to Amelia County. The total collected for the calendar year for the state of Virginia is $85,854. I think I skipped over the CRC. CRC item of interest for February of '22 is included in your book. I think Mr. Jones or Mr. Phelps might be able to speak to anything that's in here if anybody's got any questions. Final thing is there is I guess Carla's got tab 13. This is for your notification. These were movements on the budget that was increased revenue line, $500 for the sheriff's office to pay for the signage on the Safe Exchange parking area for National Night Out. There was $34,000. There was a circuit court's records preservation grant received from the state. We had to increase, and that was by signature, we had to increase the budget lines for that. And the last thing is, we got a certificate from the Commonwealth of Virginia stating Amelia is an official V3 certified community, all this company actually. Virginia values veterans. For our commitment to recruiting, hiring, training, and retaining Virginia's veterans, serving members of the National Guard and Reserve, came from the governor's office. Be happy to entertain any questions that anybody might have.
Questions from the board member? Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Well, that brings us to the board members' comments.
I apologize. I did have one I forgot to write down. Mr. Harvey, I believe the last few weeks you had mentioned the easement issue at Jetersville.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure what's going on, but I think that's a high priority. Could you explain, is there something we can do or we need to do?
Well, we have communicated with VDOT, and we've gone to a surveyor to put it on paper. Mr. Easter got a letter from VDOT saying that they intended to donate some unused right-of-way back to the original property, which sounds easy enough until we looked at it, and we had been given a parcel by that owner, and if everything that VDOT was going to turn back went to the original owner, our entrance to the fire station where the trucks pull in, we wouldn't touch the public right of way. So Daryl did a great job. He got a surveyor, aerial photographs, put it all together. And the last we've heard from them, which was last week, was they had gotten what they needed. I assume we're going to have a happy ending on that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. White. Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Well, that brings us to our board member comments. Mr. Jones, you want to start off?
I don't know if you want me to, but I got to say that I'm sorry if I'd offended anybody. That wasn't my intentions, and that I am confused. Who is the chairman of our board? That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Wyatt?
Yes, first I'd like to thank you for the vote a minute ago. If we don't agree on anything else up here, we need to agree on transparency and putting the citizens first. That's why I'm up here. That's the only reason I'm here. That's what it's all about. So I do appreciate that. Also, earlier, just a comment that stuck in my head. I mentioned about us throwing money at things. Over the two budget cycles that I've been through, I mean, I think that the amount of time that the administration and the board puts and invests in our budget, I don't feel that Amelia really throws money at it. I think it's far more thoughtful and responsible than that. And I feel the same way about the schools. I mean, it's a new administration. They've completely turned that around, and they've showed fiscal responsibility and conservatism the last couple of years. So I just think that term is a bit condescending to Amelia County and to all the hard work that goes into our financial budgets.
Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Easter?
I agree. I think we've had some good presentations tonight. A lot of work done by the school administration, the school board on their budget. I think they do a really deliberate job. For those who are critical, I think it'd be good if you actually went through all the materials and saw the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they have saved and the many things that are incredibly valuable that they're actually not including in this budget. They're not asking for a budget increase of much more than the cost of living. And overall in this county, we are conservative. We're looking at an overall budget increase for the county that's less than the cost of living because we do a really good job spending our funds. I also think it was a really valuable presentation from Farm Bureau tonight. I know I spent some time with questions. Just want to reiterate that. That's one of the most exciting things for me personally is when citizens individually or groups come and present something. I love to see the county looking forward instead of being stuck where we are or continuing to look backward from that. And agree with Mr. Wyatt's comments on transparency. It's been something I've preached from day one of my election and will continue to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Easton. Mr. Robinson?
Yeah, I just want to tell the citizens that now is the time for the input. It's budget cycle. Need to hear what you want us to do. We raise taxes? Do we cut spending? How do we go? It's all up to you. So you need to contact all the board members and let your voice be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I kind of echo all the same. Just want to remind everybody, we changed our clock last week. Please change the batteries. Thank you for your time. That brings us to the end of our regular meeting. There is a need for closed session.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to state the motion?
Yes, sir.
We need a motion that the board move to convene in closed session for the purpose of discussing upgrades to and the current status of the county's cybersecurity infrastructure and protocols in consultation with legal counsel regarding these issues, which discussion and consultation is exempt under Virginia Code Section 2.23711 A8 and A19.
Thank you, Mr. Gore. That's the motion, gentlemen. All in favor of going into closed session? Raise your hand. All right. Wayne, we don't really expect you after this.